Hello everyone, welcome back to OCD Recovery's YouTube channel. Today I have a very special video. It's a remake of a video I did 10 months ago. So if you go into the video section, you scroll all the way down to 10 months, you'll see a video by myself and it's titled Doing Nothing. Well, now that I'm much further along on my recovery journey, I'm much more rational, I'm much more calm. I see things a lot differently even than I was back then. 10 months ago, I was still basically chronically suffering and it was still hard for me to see things in the way that I see them now. So I'm going to go back to the really old videos I first started. I'm going to repackage some of them. I think it's a good way to see how, even just seeing how I've progressed throughout. Maybe you watch both and you think, wow, look at the progress he's made in these 10 months, chronically suffering right then and making some videos and not so much chronically suffering now, or really not at all in the main things I was suffering with. So, and that again is called Doing Nothing. Before I go any further, you could please subscribe down below. There's great videos going up on this channel all the time. A lot of videos going up by myself. As I said in the last few videos, Rob, have been going through looking at questions that people want to see answered. A lot of it comes down to, how do I work on acceptance? What is the difference between acceptance versus agreement? What does doing nothing mean? Does that mean sitting on the couch? And I do have, as Moman did in his last video, my little layout right here if I'm not using the whiteboard. I do suggest watching Moman's recent video on his 2-year recap. I think it was probably one of the best videos on the channel. It really shows the journey of Moman, of where he came from. It definitely brought me to tears, and he was saying that he couldn't even get to the room and get a glass of water in the kitchen because of all the rituals and compulsions and anxiety feelings that he was avoiding. So Moman's come a really long way, and his anxiety was really, really bad. He was chronically latched for 6-7 years. I was latched for a really long time too, but it's a very good video. So a lot of people misunderstand by what I mean when I say what is doing nothing. So I can tell you what doing nothing doesn't mean. It doesn't mean sitting on the couch. It doesn't mean just doing absolutely nothing, sitting on your phone all day, engaging in other avoidance compulsive behaviors that make us feel good in the moment. So like compulsive video game usage or phone usage, or drinking 5, 6, 7 cups of coffee a day, and all these other activities that we tend to fall down because we feel good in the moment. We get into coasting, and it is really important to talk about this. More than likely, everyone will coast at some point in time. And then the important thing is to realize you're coasting after a while and then continue to move forward in your recovery. So the number one thing by what do I mean by doing nothing is this. You don't need to act on something in the moment. And I have 3 different examples down below, which I will cover. ROCD, real event / false memory, and I'm going to talk about PTSD a little bit too, because it is very similar with the belief systems, chronic shame and guilt, looking at that shouldn't have happened to me, I should have been there, the shoulds, oughts, and musts. How do we know this? Because we've applied this to people that have had severe PTSD with OCD and completely gotten over their fears. There's a girl who Rob did the video with that was at the bombing of the Ariana Grande concert, had really bad PTSD, worked on her belief system, and completely recovered in a year or 2. So it does not mean, as I said, sitting down and doing nothing. That's what a lot of people think. Well, you mean doing nothing. Should I sit down and do nothing? No, it means taking the foot off the gas in recovery. So basically I wrote here, explain what taking the foot off the gas means and recovery burnout. I believe Sadie, Kirsty, a couple people have talked about what this means by recovery burnout. Recovery burnout is something that I do believe that many of us will basically deal with at some point in our recovery journey. It's a very taxing journey. There's a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of uncomfortable feelings. There's a lot of going towards trying to unwind your irrational beliefs. The whole journey can really put you in a place where you're almost kind of just like bogged down after a while. So this might be time to take the foot off the gas and do nothing. Now, your foot can be on the gas in certain areas of your recovery journey. You could still be doing nothing. So when I mean doing nothing, I primarily mean not acting in the moment and making rash decisions. Like for myself, anytime I felt slight discomfort, I would change my exercise program, or I would change something about my macronutrient intake, or I would, change the way I was doing a recovery tool. And that is a compulsive behavior that keeps many people in the OCD community stuck. And it's actually really not good for people who don't have OCD either, because you do not have to make rash decisions in the moment. And I'm not talking about worst case scenarios like you're in a forest fire or something crazy. I'm talking about the average everyday things people go through that make drastic changes in the moment when they want to do it. So what we're basically talking about here is moving with uncertainty. Now, as we've talked about, that's not the primary aspect of a recovery journey, but it is a very, very important aspect of the journey, and it is worth covering. So Paul David's It Lasts a Life and Claire Weeks' Self-Help for Your Nerves. So Paul David's like a new packaged version, as Rob says, of Claire Weeks' Self-Help for Your Nerves. Those books show you how to deal with anxiety and basically at the chronic level, how to let the anxiety symptoms be there. Paul David does talk about acceptance of those feelings. I always talk about this. Acceptance is not just acceptance of the particular fears you have. There are many realms of acceptance out there. Acceptance of having a disorder. You have obsessive compulsive disorder, which is more than likely a genetic disorder that's turned on by environmental lifestyle factors and other things as well. Acceptance that might take you a couple years to get better. It might take you 4 years to get better. We don't know. It might take you 9 months. It's probably not going to take you 1 to 2 weeks or a couple months, as most people say in the forums and stuff I read on chronic OCD recovery. It's certainly not true. It's also a good way to bring it back because disputing anything can become compulsive. Any single thing in the OCD recovery journey can become compulsive. I got my my nice beach mug again. This is hazelnut coffee from Hawaii, so it's so good. Kauai coffee, not Kona coffee, but that's very good. So as I said, I made Erica bring me back 5 pounds of coffee when she went to Hawaii. So these are some of the examples that I want to talk about. So we have ROCD, the feeling of leaving right now. That's a huge thing that people deal with. I'm going to pause this video in the background. I have like a ocean scene playing. So the feeling of leaving right now, like I need to leave right now. I need to know the answer right now. You don't need to know it right now. You can go with discomfort, feel the anxiety, and do nothing about it and go about your day. Real event, false memory, solipsism, somatic OCD. I must figure this out right now. I must know what I did in the past. I must know if that event is real. I must know if I'm living in a simulation. I must know if my saliva fears are real. That is one of the biggest tricks of OCD. You don't need to know right now. The way to go forward is to go about uncertainty with that. This takes time and practice and patience and many ups and downs. So PTSD, let's use that one. I must escape this room right now. Let's say you're in a room and you do have severe PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. It doesn't always have to do with war and veterans and stuff like that. It could be any major trauma event. But when you're in that place and you say to yourself, I must escape this feeling right now, all you're doing is continuing that cycle of PTSD, whether it's OCD, whether it's GAD, generalized anxiety disorder. It really comes down to not being able to handle discomfort. Handling discomfort is such a major part of the OCD recovery journey that really just can't be overlooked. I talk about that and say those exact words time and time again because there is some absolute truth to that. It really has validity. So doing nothing is more of an art, a skill, and a practice. It takes time to be able to realize that I don't have to act. I don't have to figure this out right now. In Momin's last video, he talked about that. He finally had gotten to a place where he doesn't need to fear certain scenarios. He can deal with the discomfort and stuff like that. When I have situations where, whether it's because I maybe have had a little bit too much caffeine that day and something kind of popped up in my schedule with my work, and then maybe I'm doing something for Rob and stuff like that. And my schedule I have a list of what I have to do, and then new things are popping up. I have to move things around. So one of my big things was I need to figure it out right now. I have to make sure my schedule is exactly how I said it was, but it actually doesn't need to be like that. And that was really keeping me stuck for quite some time. Then I started to realize that I actually don't need to figure it out right now. I can go with uncertainty. I can just go about my day and let those uncomfortable feelings be there. I don't need to figure it out. I don't have to know if it's real. I don't have to know if it's going to be there for an hour or two or a week or two or a month or two. I don't need to figure that out anymore. I have nothing that I really fear at this point in my recovery journey. I still have fears, but I'm not fearful of them in the way where I'm panicking with chronic severe, shakes and anxiety. A lot of the times it's just a hum in the background, which is a large part of the recovery journey too. You will have symptoms more than likely for most people humming in the background for quite some time. Not everyone, but a lot of us will have that. It doesn't mean you're not making progress, but coasting is definitely a thing. You might come to a point where you feel very burned out. You've been working on your fears for a while. Maybe arbitrarily you got 60% better in 17 months. And you're like, man, I'm living life on my terms, but it's still buzzing in the background. It's okay to take the foot off the gas for a couple months and just go about your life. This doesn't mean you're going to go back to what you were doing, but you're going about your life, building healthy structures, engaging with friends, not being too compulsive with video game usage, phone usage, alcohol consumption if you don't have a problem with that, caffeine consumption. just living a balanced life. That alone is a very important part of the OCD recovery journey. You don't need to be working on actively finding your core fears all the time. We talk about it because it's probably the pinprick to the heart of OCD, because at the heart of OCD, there is a fear cycle going on. Fear of judgment, fear of rejection, fear of loneliness, fear of the unknown, fear of uncertainty, fear of being stuck forever, fear of being chronically anxious, fear of being chronically shameful or guilt. A lot of these very core fears are the things I just mentioned that's keeping us latched. A lot of people with chronic OCD have multiple fears that are intertwined, so it might take some time to realize that. So thank you so much for watching this video. Again, doing nothing is definitely a huge part of the recovery process. One of the things that, I've realized that if I want to make a change in my life, whether it doesn't matter if it's OCD or not, because that's an endless pursuit. If I want to make a change in my life, I let it go for a week or two. I sit on that. I think about it. Oliver was just talking to me about that recently with a new job that he was going through. He said, it took me a week to think about this. And I think that's a very important factor. OCD or not, it doesn't matter. When you're making decisions momentarily based on the moment to change, going from, I'm going 100% ketogenic diet to I'm going to 100% fat-free, and you just flip-flop A and B in the moment, that's not good for you. That plays into OCD in a way that a lot of people don't quite understand. So in order to get to where you want to go, balance is absolutely necessary. You always see stuff about not being balanced. We've talked about this so many times. You see stuff like, never drink caffeine, it's terrible for you. Never use cell phones, iPhones are the devil, and all these crazy black and white statements. It comes down to balance. Not everyone can balance as easy as other people, but you can work on that and deal with the discomfort. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe down below, and have a great day.